let's get into that with Auburn. What were your thoughts last Saturday night with
You
the
know,
way Gus
I
handled that
felt a
deal?
lot. I felt like you just, expressed. It was kind of perplexing. I've been in a situation where where you're rotating at quarterback, and I get it. You're trying to find the guy that will give you a spark, and wasn't too different than that. In Alabama's first half, but it looks like they got a guy or even two that can get the job done. But I mean, I felt like there was just no chance for a guy to get in a rhythm. And when you get pulled, even though, let's just say it's a package or, a separate package that you don't fit as well as, let's say, Jeremy Johnson or whatever, still when you get pulled, you're still thinking, okay, I guess, part of your thought process well, I guess I could have done a little better on that drive, because I'd still be in. And I don't know. I think I like you, I would have liked to see them settle on a guy. And I thought Sean White, once he kind of was in there for a couple possessions in a row, looked like he's going to give him the best chance.
Is this a classic case, though, David, of Gus just not having that one guy that he really needs? And when we talk about that one guy, we're obviously talking about a guy who can hit some big plays in the passing game. But at the end of the day, doesn't it start with the running game and at least that threat of the quarterback being able to beat
Absolutely.
you that way? And in Sean White,
Sure.
while I do agree that at this point, based on what we've seen, you should just go with him. Is that where we're at right now? You think in
I
what
feel
Gus is
like
trying
it.
to figure
I
out?
feel like I feel like you're on it. I mean, you got to have a guy that can bring in that dual threat ability in that offense. That's the way it's built. But at the same time, you got to have a guy that takes care of the football. They can make throws. I mean, and they can put points on the board. Teams are gonna start doing exactly what Clemson did, just kind of stack the box and say, hey, you got to beat us throwing the ball with your receiving core and with your array of quarterbacks. So I feel like the most important thing is the guy that can get them, can move them down the field. And it's a tough toss up. I would love to see Jeremy Johnson be the guy. And
Really?
I would love that. I felt like even last week he was playing pretty good, and then he had kind of that bad possession, and you're just like, oh, on that pick that he could have just put a little more and it's a touchdown, and you hate to see that. But I'm not over seeing him. I think he could probably get a job done. I just want to see them go with one guy. And I just want to say, hey, pull the trigger on one of those two guys. I don't think Franklin's going to be able to get it done for you. And just let them freaking get comfortable and let them make some mistakes and let them, take some shots. And I don't know. I just don't feel like there's a lot of confidence around that offense right now. And, it's pretty obvious. So.
And that goes back to the core of who they are. I mean, because when they've been great in recent years, they've had that dynamic quarterback. They've had some decent years with guys like Sean White that are more one-dimensional. But in terms of winning championships or competing for championships, it's been Nick Marshall and it's been Cam Newton. And understanding that you're not going to get a Cam Newton every time around,
Sure.
it just
No, I
surprises
get it.
me that they're in this situation this deep into Gus's time there. Now, looking at Alabama, we'll move it back to here in Tuscaloosa. Your thoughts on how Alabama handled that situation last Saturday night? Were you surprised that it wasn't the veteran? And then kind of the way they swapped out between Barnett and Hurts really early in the game?
Yeah, I was a little surprised. I thought kind of all along that Cooper would be the guy, and that first possession or two, and then you would see one of the young guys come in, and but then I understand the frame of thought that starts Barnett and then kind of puts Hurts in there. Although I didn't think it was very rhythmic, I didn't quite understand the timing of it. Although Barnett did struggle a little early and took some big shots, looked a little rattled, but it's not like Hurts came in there and immediately turned it on. It looked to me like they gave Hurts a little more of a leash early on. And they're going to have to give both those guys a leash, whoever they pull the trigger on, because they're going to make some mistakes, and then they're going to get in a groove. But same thing, you kind of want to see him go in a direction, but this is what Nick does, and I would imagine that both of them will play a whole lot. this Saturday, and then he's going to kind of give the keys to somebody for Ole Miss. Well, until they mess it up. So,
David, I wanted to ask you about what you just talked about a little bit. When they gave Hurts more than that third possession, and he struggled. The offense struggled in those first three possessions. Did that give you the sense that this is maybe the guy they want to take it over? Because they stuck with him.
Yeah.
And they were quick to go away from Barnett.
Yeah, it does. It does. It kind of makes you say, okay, they're going to be a little more patient with Hurts because I think they just feel like it was obvious that they feel like this guy is very close to being something, really special. And they kind of let him live through his down moments, which is the way it's supposed to be. And then I was happy for Barnett to come in the second half and make some plays. So I do think they have two guys that can get it done. And heck, I think Bateman can win games for you. So I just think they got to pull the trigger on one of them. I just think going into a big game like Ole Miss is going to be hungry after that, the way they lost the other night. And I just feel like, it makes a lot of sense to give a guy and say, hey, you're my guy. But I don't foresee that happening. But I would like to see it.
Talking with David Morris of QB Country and QBCountry.com. You're around quarterback training. Does a great job down there in the Mobile area. Has worked with A.J. McCarron, Jake Coker, among others. And talk about the perception of when you have two quarterbacks. Typically, you hear the old adage, David, well, if you got two, you don't have one. But when you look at these two guys, do you see it as Alabama having two SEC caliber type starters?
I think so. But, all things aren't equal in a competition of two guys, much less three or four. So, there's no doubt that a guy has looked better. And so, I don't know exactly who that guy is, every day. But I just think the thing that it does more than anything is if you don't play confident, then it's going to be hard to be successful. And confidence comes from several different things. Obviously repetition and experience, but also from being able to make a bad play, have a bad possession, and still, and still have the keys and to be able to go back out there and give it another shot. So I think that the confidence thing is what I would worry about as you get into the season, deeper into it at Alabama if they don't pull the trigger on one guy.
Let's move over to UGA real quick, David, and talk about that situation behind center. Kirby Smart apparently not hesitating to pull the trigger on a true freshman as Jacob Eason is expected to take over as the number one guy beginning this week. What did you see from Eason in the first week, and does it surprise you that we're at this point given his talent, I guess?
It doesn't surprise me a whole lot. It does make you say, well, why didn't they just do that, off the bat, against North Carolina? Maybe they thought that it'd be kind of too big of a stage on to do that. And Nickel State, I believe that's who they have, is a good game to do that. And I think he's super talented. They didn't do much with him last week. It was very conservative. It was very vanilla, and I think that's smart. They can't play that way and win every Saturday. So, I would expect them to open it up a little bit. It's a good game to open it up. Let them get comfortable. Let them try to get in the groove. And obviously, I think he's a guy that can play, but it's a different ball game at this level, and he's not used to this level. So, but I just makes me kind of again say, well, he's the guy after week one. Why wouldn't you just name him the guy earlier? Is it like a respect or seniority type thing? I don't know, but it is what it is. So he's in a great position to have a big year.
And, David, I tell you, that September 24th game in Oxford against Ole Miss, you could be looking at, with Alabama in there the week before, two true freshmen back-to-back against Ole Miss in SEC play. I don't know if I can recall that when you talk about programs like Georgia and Alabama running true freshmen out there, but I guess it's just a different era because guys like you do too good of a job of developing these guys.
Well, there's a lot of different aspects. Heck, if Chad Kelly went at Ole Miss, I wouldn't be surprised if Shea Patterson was starting over there. So, they're just good quarterbacks out there that, like you said, they're more developed. And I promise you, the high school coaches these days don't get enough credit. And just down in South Alabama, I mean, there's some high school coaches that, in my mind, in 4 or 5 years will be in college and could easily be there now. I mean, just the offenses are more sophisticated. Guys are lighting it up. They are training more in the off season, and so they're just a little more polished, a little more weathered, and a little more trained up. And and I think they're in high school football these days. They're more well coached than they've ever been. So I just think it's a lot of different aspects, but I don't think it's going to slow down. I think it's going to only be more common as we continue this kind of diving all in to kind of position specific training. So it's pretty interesting though, especially a big program.
Talking with David Morris of QB Country about quarterbacks around the SEC, including Jalen Hurts and Blake Barnett at the University of Alabama. And as we let you go, David, former Ole Miss Rebel David Morris, Alabama obviously with a huge one coming up in Oxford a week from tomorrow. If you had to say today, Jalen Hurts or Blake Barnett, the opening snap a week from tomorrow at Vaught Hemingway Stadium?
I'd say Hurts. I just have to say Hurts. I mean, it makes the most sense. And I don't like getting into the guessing game. And I do know there is emotions and there is a team you're trying to keep together. So there is some strategy involved in who is the guy. But, I just think Hurts, once he gets in a rhythm, once he learns that offense, I mean, you can see just how dynamic he could be. And you got to love his poise and his confidence. He was never big-eyed. He never looked out of place. So that's